Are you a traditional like photographer, like or in the traditional sense of like you use photography by the rules that photographers decided photography was to be shot, or do you like use it as an artist? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I think pretty much I use it as both actually. So I kind of like I love photography, the medium, and I teach it too. So
Mm-hmm.
I think like I'm really loving that line that straddles between like art and documentary. And so
Okay.
I've always really enjoyed that line. And I do I think for my practice, I studied at Goldsmiths in university. It's part of University of London, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was in a master's called photography and urban cultures, and so it was a mixture of photography and sociology. And so actually initially when I started, I really wanted to be a photojournalist back in the day, and
Mm-hmm.
when I was like 20 years ago, when I was like in college. And so but then I started learning about like ethics. I took a class like history of documentary photography, and I started learning about ethics, and I was like pretty much appalled as a young person, and I just like didn't want to pick up my camera. And so then I started exploring like other art mediums. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I got into like pretty much teaching. I didn't feel like I was good enough to draw and paint and things like that. And so I got into teaching art, and it started at a domestic violence shelter. So post college I worked at emergency shelter for kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like with this 3 year old, and she just started like I was really bad. I was like supposed to do like children's advocacy groups. I don't know what I was doing. I was like 23, but like I really connected with this little girl, and she was cutting up paper and pasting it. And it's like, they were in emergency shelter, so a lot of these kids, I had to sign them up for school, and just kind of like, it was a secret location, everything. And so I just found out that like art was so healing. And so like from that point, I kind of decided I wanted to be an arts educator. So photography was always like kind of in the back of my mind, but it was something that just like I loved it so much in high school. But I was like one of those people that was like tortured by the ethics of it, and tortured by like, representation and things like that. And sociology actually really helped me like rethink a lot of those things, because the man who started my program just really talked about this idea that like when you're taking a picture, and so when you're in the street, like if you think about urban photography and sociology, like what is that long-term engagement you have, and what's your relationship to the street, not just like the people that you're taking a picture of, but what's your relationship to the street, what's your relationship to the place. And like thinking about like, there's a subject there and you're looking at them, but they're looking back at you. So I think for me, that kind of opened up like a lot of things about identity and who I am. And I started to really like just figure out like who am I in my body, and how does that affect my photography. And so then I engaged in a lot of different projects. So I love to photograph like at clubs. I would do that. I followed some teenagers. And then like ultimately the work that I continue to do, and I teach a class on it, is like this reconstructed family archive work. And so I take like, just like, ideas around family, and I think about like how we can reconstruct them and change narratives, and just really re-envision how we see our families. And so I'm just kind of all over the place, and I teach like 7 classes.
You do in terms of family, like how many siblings do you have? How big is your family?
um I mean, I have like 18 cousins that I'm really
18
close to on
cousins.
my mom's side, and then I have 2 siblings.